so much for joining me here today at Holmesglen for the official launch of my debut fantasy young adult novel, Still Waters Run Deep. Woo! Thank you! My name, as it says on the book, is MG Hunt, but you can call me Monica or Mon, that's totally fine. I'm so excited to talk about this book, which has been a project 6 years in the making. And to be honest, it feels surreal that it's out to the world. This little story of elemental magic and breaking down barriers is finally being read and enjoyed by people. So, before we dive into the creation of Still Waters Run Deep, before we get into it, I'd just like to take a moment to acknowledge the traditional owners on the lands at which we meet today. We acknowledge the traditional owners of the lands in which we gather today, in particular the Wurundjeri, Bunurong and Taungurung peoples, on whose lands Holmesglen Campus stands. We pay our respects to the elders past and present and extend that respect to all First Nations peoples. Okay, so let's take a trip down memory lane. Am I in a good spot? Yeah. Alright, in order to paint a picture of the development of my book, we need to go back to when I was a child. And when I was a child, I was obsessed with drawing and creating stories. The drawing part was my physical expression about story creation, but it was the best way that I could get the ideas out of my head. My parents will agree that I was fixated on drawing cartoon characters from a young age. Some of my favourite sources of inspiration were Pokemon, Sailor Moon, Harry Potter and Star Wars. All grand stories with rich array of characters and visuals which inspired my drawings. And as I got a bit older, I started creating more stories in my head, which were often great epics, following strong female protagonists with magical powers. But I never felt like I had the ability to capture the exact ideas with words, so I preferred to express them through drawings. And that was a cathartic experience for me. And throughout my teenage years, I turned to drawing and art as a great source of inspiration and escapism for comfort. So, I'm going to show you a few of my early drawings. Some of them I did on Microsoft Paint. Now look, I thought I was so professional with my Microsoft Paint skills there. Things have changed. I've now gotten myself an iPad to do the sketches, but back in the day when I was, 13, that was like, yeah, I'm onto something here with my MS Paint skills. So, the need for me to put the story ideas onto paper could not be fully realised through drawing, no matter how hard I tried. When I approached the end of my high school years, I considered what I wanted to do for my tertiary education. And I couldn't shake the desire to create stories, but I didn't think that a creative writing degree was for me. Also, for context, I am a very slow reader, so I did feel a bit inadequate to be able to participate in literary discussions. I felt like a book like War and Peace would take me 2 entire lifetimes to read. But I knew I wanted to work in an area where I could be creative, and I wondered whether the compulsion to create stories would eventually fade away when I entered my 20s and started at uni, that I would eventually grow out of this phase. Spoiler alert, I didn't. And I'm so glad I didn't. So I threw myself into a Bachelor of Arts and Visual Arts, which was a rewarding degree, but I wasn't sure where my future headed. I enjoyed making art, and I enjoyed learning sociology, but I also didn't know what the career options that were available were out there. I eventually found myself doing a diploma of graphic design to satisfy that urge to nurture my desire to express myself visually and turn that desire into a stable career. And as I worked as a graphic designer, I thought I would be so busy that in this career that I would have no idea, no time to think about writing stories. That compulsion would just go and I'd grow out of it again. I would be satisfied with that career choice, and that is true. I am very pleased with that choice to do graphic design as my full-time job. But the urge remained, and I still wanted to explore what else was there in my creative field. So let's get into some developments of these characters in my book. So, let's skip to 2020, that year that was pivotal for all of us. It threw our routine and comforts into a spin, and most of us sought new forms of entertainment and habits. Work had changed, socialising had changed, and seclusion became easier to attain. And that seclusion was the catalyst for me to spend more time with my mind and talk to the voice begging me to create the stories that were in my head. So to backtrack just a little, I was toying with the idea that the idea would turn into Still Waters Run Deep, with an idea of a short story that I wrote in 2019. And that was based on a story that I had crafted when I was in Iceland with my husband, and it was an amazing place, and inspired me in so many ways. The glaciers, the snowy landscape, painted a vivid world in my head for my characters in my head to traverse. I continued to replay this story in my head of this little story of an idea of a girl with blood red hair sitting in boiling water. I don't know where that came from, but it just didn't leave me. So I realised eventually I just want to write this story. I want to get it out there. So I thought, well, I can't write a story. So let's just draw it. Let's just draw it instead. So these are my early attempts of doing a graphic novel. And I was so excited to start with this graphic novel. But let me tell you, these were the only stills that made it past my iPad, because I soon realised I can't do any more than 3. It's taking me like 2 weeks to do this. How am I going to write this story that's in my head? Okay, I really need to think about some other ways of putting this idea out there. Still, I quite like them, but it's interesting how the story has evolved. If you read the book, I'd be curious if you know, when you read it, you can tell which chapter this is in, because it is part of the pivotal chapter in the book. But anyway, that's not a spoiler, that's just a tidbit of information. So, as I said before, I wasn't a reader like some of my other friends were. My reading pace is laughable, but when the world started to slow down in March of 2020, I felt that the time was right for me to spend some time on this project and just write. And writing is what I did. Every morning before I started work, I spent 30 minutes or so working on whatever came into my head. It started as a standalone project with some short stories that characters would eventually intersect with each other, and then they formed chapters of my book. And then while I was proud of the work that I was doing internally, I did feel so shy to reveal this new passion project of mine. I was not known as a reader with my friends, so I felt like, well, how could I enter a world that I felt so impenetrable and prestigious as the writing world? In my mind, maybe only books worth reading were crafted by the wordsmith experts, and that I was not. But every person has to start somewhere, and I was determined to get through my fear of not being good enough to write by slowly introducing my project to some select friends, and of course, my mum. Mum was the first person who read my first draft of Still Waters Run Deep. She did not judge, and in fact encouraged with the story critically and offered amazing feedback. She always prefaced her feedback as something not to take to heart, but you've got to remember, Mum, I always joke, I've done a visual arts degree. So if that doesn't prepare you to receive gut-wrenching critique on your heartfelt artwork, nothing else would. Still, she helped me formulate the first draft of Still Waters Run Deep, and by the end of 2021, I was ready to start querying to traditional publishers. Or so I thought. So, excuse me. Is that back in? Yes. The publishing journey. The advice that I've gleaned from countless online outlets seemed that people advocated that as a debut author, I should try my hardest to get published traditionally. Now, for those that might not be aware, there is a difference between being published traditionally versus self-published. Traditional publishing involves a publishing house handling the editing, the design and the marketing, but often more with gatekeeping and longer timelines. And self-publishing gives authors full control and higher royalties, but requires them to manage all aspects of publishing themselves. So, I studied how to write query letters and query my emails to publishers. I endured this process for about 2 years with lots of unanswered emails. But when I received a rejection email, it was treated as a bit of a success because at least it had been considered in some way, shape or form. Finally, my hopes and dreams were answered when a publisher finally accepted my query offer in September 2023. And at that point in time, I was so excited. Like many of my other colleagues with this particular publisher, we were also excited. However, things didn't go the way that I had planned. Unfortunately, after many internal investigations and moral questioning, I had to make the difficult decision to part ways with this particular publisher that had signed me on. Their business model did not align with my values. And that was probably one of the hardest parts along my journey to publishing Still Waters Run Deep. It was a decision that I didn't take lightly, but I eventually made the tough decision to pivot towards self-publishing Still Waters Run Deep. I knew what I wanted the book to look like. And although I was new to the publishing world, little did I know a door would open for me to a world of like-minded writers and creatives, all on a special community online, which is called, let's go back one, the Bookstagram. Bookstagram, as the title suggests. Yeah. Is a combination of the two words books and Instagram. Say what you will about social media, but if you find the right people, you can find your online community. And I was introduced to many other Aussie and international indie authors that were on the same publishing journey together. And I'm so thankful that I can call some of them my close friends. So with the self-publishing journey, I started to form connections online, started to ask more questions about how other people publish their books. Amazon and Ingram Spark were the two companies that seemed to be the key to success. And when I investigated these platforms myself, I realised how accessible it was for me and others to create the publications. Though these platforms would take commissions and arguably too much of the price, in my opinion, it was still a fantastically accessible way to get the work out there. So before formally publishing my full-length novel, Still Waters Run Deep, I actually self-published a different story. It was a short story titled Elara and the Passing. I'm just going to grab a copy so you can see it. Some of my friends have read this little book. It's tiny, it's just a short story, but it was a great test to see what's going to happen when I publish my big Still Waters Run Deep book. It's a book that is part of the universe, but it's a bit of a standalone story within that. So you don't have to read either or to get into the whichever book you want to. So it was an incredible test. I learned so much about that, and I was blown away with the support it received. And I have a lot of people to thank in this room for that, for all of the support that that little book gave me. So it was time to get Still Waters Run Deep out there. Okay, so the emergence of Still Waters Run Deep. I was ready to fire on all cylinders to get this book out there. I knew the cover design was going to be one of the most important elements for getting eyes on the book. And thank God I did a graphic design diploma because I could do this myself. It was a lot of work. It was a lot of work, but I'm so pleased with where it is today. And when you have a look at the copies over there, you might be able to see that there is a special element on the books, which is a beautiful silver foiling for the title, which perhaps this image doesn't capture it exactly, but that was one thing that I knew I could do on my own that perhaps I wouldn't have been able to do and exactly know what I wanted if I had gone with a traditional publisher. So I also had to honour my passion for drawing. It's still there. Along with the book, I created portraits of the main characters in the book as well. Here are some of them as well. Some of those illustrations were turned into merch. So, here are our main characters. We've got Asta in the middle, Zan and Inks. And don't worry, there's a pronunciation guide in the front of the book. I know what you're all thinking. Why did I put that silent K of the Zan? Anyway, just for feels interesting. Finally, what is the book about? So, I'm going to quote the blurb for you. Living in the peaceful village of Lorga, Asta keeps her water affinity hidden from everyone, including the people closest to her. Asta's life changes forever when she is forced to leave her home and is kidnapped by a hidden group of elemental affinities known as Vellum. In Vellum, Asta encounters other people like herself. Rather than hiding their elemental powers, they embrace them, for better or worse. Asta soon learns that things in Vellum are not as they seem. She has to endure the domineering ways of Gatira, Vellum's creator. Gatira is a curious, undead scholar who seeks not only to enhance the elemental powers of the affinities she looks after, but to serve her own controlling self-interests. She is also a force Asta must choose to serve under or to reckon with. Okay, so if that doesn't get you excited for the book, I'm now going to read the first page from Still Waters Run Deep, which this is the book in all its shiny glory. Here it is. I'm so pleased with how the foil came out. So if we all want to get comfy just for a little bit, I'm going to read that line, the frame and everything. What do you think of it? Okay. Alrighty. So I'll read to you all chapter 1, which is titled North. Boiling water hit her skin, but she felt no pain. The pastel blue of the bubbling water mimicked the sky, clouds culminating at the surface. Unlike the sky, the bubbles broke the surface. Furnace-like heat emanated from the pool. Pastel blue shades appeared surreal, and the closest the villagers had seen to magic. But Asta knew magic lay in the palm of her hand. Kneeling at the pool's edge, she smiled as she lifted the water with her hands. Instead of the liquid slipping through her fingers, it coiled around her palms. Asta, a young woman of Lorga, was a water affinity, a secret she guarded with her life. For her life would be taken if anyone knew. The water would have been hot enough to burn anyone's skin, but she dipped her fingers in without hesitation. She swirled the water around with her hand, slowly watching the pale blue ripple. Lifting her hand, the water trailed after her, and little streams rose to meet her fingertips. She made the streams flow with her hand. The water swirled around her form. Not a drop of boiling water touched her skin. Asta grinned as she moved the water over the spring with graceful hand motions. These moments filled her mind with peace. A gift brought meaning to her and mystery to her life. A gift that is both a wonderful present and a curse. Hidden for a little while in solitude, only the rocky outcrops shrouded in pine trees would know her secret. Footsteps approached. She let go of the water and rushed back along the gravel path to her cooking station. A similar young woman approached her with two long blood red braids and a fringe that curled inward slightly. The two women looked identical, bar Asta's blue eyes to her brown, and their different tunic styles. Asta wore a grey tunic with a long skirt and a navy overcoat, while the other wore a dark blue dress. Asta, have you finished yet? The other girl asked. Asta now stood near a long metal rod dipped into the bubbling water. Let me check, Mara. And I'm going to leave it at that for now. And you'll have to read the book to see what happens next. I will get on to the final thoughts. My final thoughts. The main thing I've learned from this journey, with the risk of sounding cliche, is that publishing is now more accessible than ever to bring the book of your dreams to life. You're no longer at the mercy of the traditional publishers, and publishing has never been a money-making idea for me. I've always only wanted to tell this magical story that has been lying dormant in my brain for years. And to quote the artist Kusama, as it reads here, if there is a chance that in 100 years' time that there will be just one person who looks at my work and be touched by it, then I must continue to create art, or in my case writing, for that one person. Thank you. That's it.
Okay, and then you can send them out on your phone.
Exactly. So
Oh, that's so it.
Otherwise it's
Yeah.
So I'm just waiting for it to connect.
Yes.
And then, so you're going to have I'm going to have a massively...
I'll get you one.
You're fine, no, don't even worry.
Oh, yes, that's right.
You sure? Yeah,
Let's do that now. So Imogen and Emma, is that right?
yeah, absolutely.
This one is... So
There's Jake Gabrielli.
Absolutely. Even better.
Even better. That's the spirit.
Asta's story. And then we've got, is it Emma? E-double-M-A.
Probably cute, eh?
Absolutely. You can lead the charge.
Yeah.
Someone's got to like break the ice. I know, you're so
Oh, I love it.
all right, thank you. Do you want me to put them to Imogen as well? I'm begging ready. Yes!
Yeah, love it, thank you.
No worries. You have to trust that if I do something wrong, I trust. I don't know where I am. You know where I am.
That's such a threat.
All right. Thank you. Thank you so much for coming as well.
They asked me to pick up the book as well.
Yes, I'll get your book for you. That's why she There we go. Do you need this one signed too? I'm wondering, Sakshi, would you mind finding a book that's